tears feel like rain.
Do you get involved at all in what's happening in the States with civil rights? Or do you sort
No,
of...
I
are you-
never, no, I just stick to my music.
It's been 7 years since Fats Domino died. Now, Daughter finally confirmed what we all feared. Fats Domino gave the world successful hits like Blueberry Hill and Ain't That a Shame.
And tonight, I want y'all to know y'all made me very, very happy. Thank you. God bless you.
But behind that success, he battled with drug issues and a terrible gambling habit. And there was the touring accident that had a bandmate bedridden in a hospital for a long time, and also almost cost the lives of other band members too. Let's get into it.
If I see a piano, I stop for a while and they could come get me.
Fats Domino was born as Antoine Domino Jr. in New Orleans, Louisiana. He was the youngest of 8 children. His family was French Creole, and they spoke Louisiana Creole at home. They were also Catholic. He was born at home with the help of his grandmother, who was a midwife. His birth certificate had a mistake and spelled his name as Anthony instead of Antoine. His family had moved to New Orleans from a small town called Vacherie. His father played the violin and worked at a racetrack. As a child, Fats went to Louis B. McCarty School, but he left early to work. His first job was helping an ice delivery man. Around 1938, he learned to play the piano from his brother-in-law, Harrison Verrett, who was a jazz guitarist. Fats quickly became very good at the piano.
My brother-in-law had he's played Papa Setter stand band, and he used to play banjo, guitar. His name was Harrison Verrett. He's the one who taught me the chords, and I went from there.
By the time he was 14, Fats was already playing music in bars around New Orleans. In 1947, a bandleader named Billy Diamond heard him play at a barbecue. He liked Fats' piano skills and asked him to join his band.
I love so much. Every time I used to deliver ice. I told you, I used to work on ice trucks, and everybody had a piano. I used to stop. But you got a piano where you better go look. You might be able to lift the piano where the piano at. That's where Fats at.
Fats started playing at a club called the Hideaway Club, earning just $3 a week. Billy Diamond gave him the nickname Fats because of his size and talent. In 1949, Fats signed a deal with Imperial Records. Instead of getting paid per song, he earned money from sales. His first big hit was The Fat Man.
I'm watching old through, girl.
A song based on an older tune called Junker Blues. It became a huge success, selling over 1 million copies. Many believe it was the first rock and roll song to reach that level of sales. In 2015, it was added to the Grammy Hall of Fame. Fats kept making hit songs with his producer, Dave Bartholomew, and his band. Some of his band members were saxophonists Herbert Hardesty and Alvin Red Tyler, bassist Billy Diamond, and drummer Earl Palmer. One of his biggest hits was Ain't That a Shame, which became popular on the pop music charts.
Ain't that a shame? My tears feel like rain.
Pat Boone recorded a softer version, which reached #1. Even though Fats never had a #1 hit on the pop charts, he had 37 songs in the top 40. By 1955, he was making $10,000 a week from touring. Fats Domino's music changed the world. His piano style, voice, and energy helped shape rock and roll. He became one of the most important musicians in history. Fats' music made people happy, and it brought together people of all colors. During that time, the United States was still heavily segregated. Black and white people were not allowed to mix in many places, including concerts. But Domino's music helped change that. He played a big role in breaking down racial barriers in rock and roll.
Fats Domino was inducted into the very first class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame back in 1986.
When Fats Domino performed, both black and white people loved his music. But back then, concerts were usually separated by race. At some of his early shows, white fans had to sit in a different area from black fans. But something special happened at his concerts. People couldn't help but dance together. They ignored the rules and started mixing. This made some people angry, and fights would break out. Some called these fights race riots. But in reality, they were started by people who did not want black and white fans to enjoy music together. Law enforcement would sometimes use tear gas to stop the concerts, but it didn't stop Domino from playing. He continued to perform for everyone, no matter their color. One of his concerts in 1956 in Virginia showed how powerful his music was. At first, black fans were on the dance floor, while white fans were in the balcony. But soon, white fans started coming down to the dance floor to join in the fun. Some angry people in the crowd threw beer bottles, trying to stop them. But the fans didn't let that ruin the night. They just wanted to enjoy the music together. Scenes like this happened many times at Domino's concerts, proving that music could bring people together even when society tried to keep them apart. During the 1960s, racism was still a big problem in America. Even though Fats Domino was famous, he still faced discrimination. Hotels, restaurants, and other places often refused to serve black people. After a concert in Virginia, a white mob chased Domino and his band back to their hotel in the black section of town. Even though he had huge hits and fans all over the country, he couldn't escape racism. He had to stay in black-only hotels because white-owned places would not allow him in. One scary experience happened when Domino's band got lost while driving through South Carolina. His saxophone player, Herbert Hardesty, stopped to ask for directions. But the people he asked were members of the Ku Klux Klan, a racist group that terrorized black people. Surprisingly, they gave directions, but a burning cross in the background reminded them of the dangers they faced. Even in the face of racism, Domino kept making music, bringing joy to people across America. Fats Domino's concerts were exciting, but sometimes things got out of hand. The first ever rock and roll riot happened at one of his concerts in 1956 in California. The band was late, and the crowd had been drinking while they waited. When the music started, everything seemed fine. But during the break, someone threw a beer bottle, and all chaos broke loose.
He had more riots than any other rock and roller, maybe ever. He had 4 major riots at his shows.
People started breaking lights and windows, and some even ran through the emergency exits. When someone threw firecrackers, it got even worse. The police arrested 11 people, and newspapers called it a rock and roll riot. Some officials wanted to ban rock music, but instead, they just stopped selling beer in concert venues.
So they were mixing alcohol, plus dancing, plus the races together for the first time in a lot of these places. And it was leading to little fights, which soon bloomed into huge fights, and they called the police.
This showed how powerful and exciting rock and roll had become.
Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, and Fats Domino. 3 incredible piano players that influenced me beyond anything else. I mean, those 3 were called the Holy Trinity.
Even though Fats Domino was a music legend, he didn't always get the credit he deserved. Many white artists covered songs by black musicians and made more money from them. One example was Pat Boone, a white singer who covered Domino's song, Ain't That a Shame? Boone's version became a hit, and some white audiences preferred his version because they were used to white artists.
Ain't that a shame? My tears feel like rain.
Boone later said that black musicians didn't mind because they still made money from songwriting. But that wasn't completely true. Many black artists were paid a small amount for their songs, while record companies made huge profits by having white artists re-record them. Fats Domino, however, didn't seem to hold any grudges. He knew he had fans of all races and that his music reached a wide audience. People of all backgrounds listened to his records and danced to his songs. Even though the music industry often treated black artists unfairly, Domino kept making great music and performing for everyone. Fats Domino wasn't just a musician. He was a quiet fighter for racial equality. He didn't give speeches or lead protests, but his music spoke for itself. He showed that black and white people could enjoy the same music together, despite segregation. His concerts were a place where people could forget about race for a while and just have fun. Even when some people tried to stop integration, Domino kept playing. He proved that rock and roll wasn't just for one race, it was for everyone. Why don't people remember Fats Domino like they remember Elvis Presley? That's a big question. Fats Domino was a huge star in his time. He sold millions of records and made songs that people still love today, like Blueberry Hill and Ain't That a Shame. But unlike Elvis, he didn't like being in the spotlight. He didn't crave attention. He was a very shy man who preferred a quiet life.
Like so many other reporters, I had tried for years to interview Fats Domino, but he was pretty camera shy.
Filmmaker Joe Lauro, who made a film about Domino, explained why he was often forgotten. He said that Domino was shy and lived a private life. He wasn't involved in scandals or wild behavior like some other stars. He didn't do crazy things like setting pianos on fire. He didn't marry a young cousin. He wasn't getting arrested or making headlines for bad behavior. Instead, when he wasn't playing music, he was at home cooking. He loved to cook and spend time with his family. His longtime music partner once said that Domino was extremely shy. He didn't like big crowds outside of performing. He preferred to eat at home rather than go to fancy restaurants. Instead of giving interviews, he would visit his favorite local bars without telling anyone. He was supposed to do interviews many times, but he often canceled them. He didn't enjoy talking about himself.
Fats back in the 50s. Surprisingly, there really was very little film footage of him.
But it wasn't just shyness. Some people who knew him well said it was much deeper than that. Fats Domino suffered from extreme stage fright and anxiety. Even after performing for many years, he still got very nervous before going on stage. In 2007, when he was 79 years old, he was supposed to perform at a concert in New Orleans. People weren't sure if he would be able to do it because his stage fright had become even worse over time. He hadn't performed in a long time, which made it harder for him. But because it was a special event to help his community, he found the courage to go on stage that night. Even though Fats Domino himself lived a clean life, some of the people around him had problems. Some of his band members struggled with drug addiction and other bad habits. One of them was Walter "Papoose" Nelson, a talented guitarist who played with Domino for many years. Nelson had a serious drug problem. He was addicted to heroin, and his life was filled with trouble because of it. He often missed shows and recording sessions because he was in jail or dealing with his addiction. Nelson was very important to Fats Domino's music. He helped create some of the most famous songs. One example is "I'm Walkin'," where he added a special touch to the guitar that made the song so catchy. Many people loved his playing, but his drug addiction was ruining his life. He would take a lot of drugs just to start his day. He would mix different kinds of pills, alcohol, and heroin. This made it hard for him to keep up with his music career. His drug use also led to legal problems. He was arrested multiple times, sometimes for missing child support payments, sometimes for drug-related issues. Each time he got into trouble, Fats Domino would help him by bailing him out of jail. Domino was loyal to his friends, even when they made bad choices. In 1962, something tragic happened. Just a few days before Fats Domino and his band were supposed to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, Nelson was found dead in his hotel room. He had taken too much heroin. He was only 29 years old. The band's road manager, Billy Diamond, was the one who discovered his body. He knew that if people found out Nelson died from drugs, it could hurt Fats Domino's reputation. So, he contacted a magazine reporter and paid them to write that Nelson had died from a heart attack instead of a drug overdose.
There was a fight, and within the fight, the police decided to throw tear gas in the hall.
Life on the road can be very dangerous, especially for musicians who travel a lot. Fats Domino and his band were always touring, playing music for people all over the world. But this also meant long hours on the road, sometimes driving late at night or in bad weather. Over the years, the band had many accidents, and some of them were very tragic. One of the worst accidents happened when the band's station wagon crashed into a big truck. The car was being driven by bassist Jimmy Davis. Sadly, Davis did not survive the crash. Other band members were also hurt, including Clarence Ford and Buddy Higgins. Ford had very serious injuries, including broken ribs and problems with his back and legs. He had to stay in the hospital for a long time and was never the same again. Clarence Ford had been with the band for many years. He was not just a musician, he also helped manage things. He made sure everyone knew the schedule and what to wear for performances. He also helped Fats Domino by giving him cues for songs. But even though he was important to the band, he did not make much money. The pay was low, and some musicians were paid more than others. Ford once joked that he got the smallest share while others got the big rewards. After the accident, Ford could no longer play with Fats Domino. His injuries made it hard for him to move, and he had to walk with a cane for the rest of his life. But he did not stop playing music. Instead, he stayed in New Orleans and played jazz with other musicians. He found a new way to continue his passion, even though he could no longer tour. Fats Domino lost many band members over the years due to accidents and other tragedies. Some people even joked that touring with him was dangerous.
Fats, you've got fantastic jewelry on, and a gassy shirt and outfit.
When it comes to his personal life, Fats Domino was a man who loved luxury. He wore big, shiny jewelry and dressed in colorful outfits. His rings, bracelets, and watches sparkled in the light. But life was not always like that for him. He grew up poor in New Orleans, where his family struggled to make ends meet. As a child, he never had fancy clothes or expensive things. His parents worked hard, but there wasn't much extra money.
But it wasn't always like that, was it? Things weren't always as luxurious as this.
Well, not exactly.
Everything changed when he became famous. Fats had a natural gift for music, and people loved his songs. As he made more money, he began spending it on things he had always wanted. He especially loved jewelry. It was his way of showing success. He once said that if his family had been rich, he would have always had nice things. But since they weren't, he had to work hard to get them.
Fats, when you've got all these things, I mean, you've got practically everything money could buy. What's left to excite you in life?
No more.
One time, when he was still young in the music business, he had $3,650. Instead of saving it or spending it on something important, he used $3,600 of it to buy jewelry. That left him with only $50. Most people would be nervous about having so little money left, but Fats wasn't worried. He believed he would always find a way to make more. Jewelry made him happy, and that was all that mattered to him. Over the years, he bought more and more. He loved rings, chains, and fancy watches. People often noticed how much jewelry he wore, and he was proud of it.
And I took $3,650 and left me $50 in the bank. That's how much I liked the jewelry.
You spent $3,600 on jewelry.
And left the $50. Didn't know where the rest was going to come from, but I had an idea I'd be working.
Fats also spent a lot of time in Las Vegas, where he was surrounded by gambling. He never called himself a serious gambler, but he admitted that it was easy to get caught up in it. When you are around something all the time, you naturally want to try it. At first, he played small games, putting nickels and quarters into slot machines. One day, he put a quarter into a machine and won $57 in silver dollars. That win gave him a rush of excitement, and he kept playing. Even though he didn't consider himself addicted, gambling became a habit. He once lost $150,000 in a single night. That was a huge amount of money, but Fats just shrugged it off. To him, money came and went easily. He wasn't worried about losing it because he always had more coming in.
Easy come, easy go with you, because I understand you're a big gambler. Is that right?
No, I'm not much of a gambler, but if you stick around Las Vegas long enough, you try.
Even though Fats Domino was a black man in America during a time of big changes, he didn't get involved in the civil rights movement. Many black musicians used their fame to speak out against racism and injustice, but Fats stayed away from politics. When people asked him why, he said his best way to help was through his music. He believed that songs could bring people together, no matter their race. Some people thought he should do more. They believed he had a responsibility to stand up for others. Fats had 6 children, and people asked if he worried about their future. Wouldn't he want them to live in a fairer world? But Fats didn't think about it that way. He believed things would get better over time. He didn't want to join protests or be part of any movement. He just wanted to focus on his music and his family.
Did you ever think when you were a kid that you'd be throwing $150,000 away?
No, I never thought I would ever get $150,000 or more.
Fats, during his career, earned good money, but some people around him took advantage of him. His lawyer, some band members, and others in his team controlled his money. They did not always do the right thing. They used his trust to benefit themselves. Because of this, he lost a lot of money over the years. Many people believe he was not treated fairly. Another problem was the record companies. They made a lot of money from Domino's music, but they did not always pay him what he deserved. At that time, many black artists were treated unfairly. White musicians would make copies of their songs and sell more records. The record companies supported this because they thought white artists would make more money.
It's funny, isn't it? It's the great American dream. Everyone can grow up to be a millionaire.
Yeah, well, sometimes people dream about it and never make it. I never dream about it.
Fats was honored by being one of the first musicians inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was in good company alongside legends like Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard. Even after this great honor, Fats Domino continued performing for a while, but by 1995, he was done with touring. His last tour in 1995 was not a happy one. He was already feeling sick and exhausted. When he traveled to the UK for some shows, he got even worse. He was supposed to perform with Chuck Berry and Little Richard, but his health took a bad turn. Doctors told him that performing could be dangerous for him. Around the same time, he also got terrible news. His sister had passed away. It was all too much for him. After that, he mostly stayed in New Orleans and rarely performed in public. He even turned down an invitation to receive the National Medal of Arts in Washington, D.C. In 2005, tragedy struck again. Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and destroyed almost everything in its path. At first, people feared that Fats Domino had died in the storm. He refused to leave his home because his wife was sick and he didn't want to move her. He also didn't think the storm would be that bad. But when the floodwaters rose to 15 feet, he had no choice. He was rescued and taken to the Superdome with other survivors. Later, when asked how he felt during the storm, he simply said he had some wine and beer, so he was fine. Even though he survived, he lost everything. His house, gold records, and music memorabilia were all gone. But he didn't let that break his spirit. Just a year later, he released a new album called Alive and Kickin'. The name was a message to the world. He was still here, and he was still strong. Some of the money from the album went to help other musicians who had lost everything in the storm. One of the things he lost in the hurricane was his famous white Steinway piano. It had been in his home for years and was a part of his life. After the storm, it was found badly damaged, sitting in floodwater for weeks. Restoring it cost $35,000. but it could never be played again. Instead, it became a symbol of Louisiana's strength. It was placed in a museum to remind people of Fats Domino's legacy and the resilience of New Orleans. After the hurricane, Fats Domino never moved back to his old home. He loved New Orleans but decided to live in Harvey, Louisiana, just outside the city. He spent his last years there, away from the spotlight. On October 24, 2017, Fats Domino passed away at the age of 89. He died peacefully from natural causes. Fats Domino never changed. He was a humble man who loved making music. He once said he was lucky to write songs that people of all ages could enjoy. And he was right. His music continues to bring joy to people all over the world.